So you're after the absolute best smartphone on the market, money no object, you're probably looking at one of these two. Galaxy S24 Ultra and the iPhone 15 Pro Max, two of the most expensive, most powerful and biggest phones around. But which should you choose? I'm Cam Bunton from Pocket-lint, and in this video I'm going to tell you. So let's talk design and durability first, because actually it can impact your experience of using any smartphone. In this case, both are pretty big devices, neither really comfortable to hold and use one-handed, even if you do enable the one-handed mode to make things easier to reach. What's interesting is that both of these phones use the same material as the supporting frame or chassis of the phone. They're both titanium, and that means they're not as heavy as they would be if they used stainless steel like the old iPhone Pro models. That's not to say they're light though, they're still over 200 grams, with the iPhone just about shaving it here by about 10 grams. It's the shape of the phones that makes a bigger difference between them than the weight though, and it's all about those sharp corners on the Galaxy. Granted, they give the S24 a fantastic minimalist, almost utilitarian look, but they can dig into the palm and cause a bit of discomfort with the wrong grip. The phone is also slightly taller, wider and thicker than the iPhone, so that translates to a much more comfy in-hand feel from Apple's phone. Still, they both feel premium, they're both top-tier devices and have the water and dust protection to match their luxury price tags. You can submerge them in water for 30 minutes and they'll be fine. Even the glass on the outside is similarly durable on the two, but they both have different names, but the two offer excellent levels of scratch and impact resistance. Now, in a lot of comparisons, especially when it comes to flagship phones, comparing displays can often feel like nitpicking the tiny differences in color, contrast and light, and all that good stuff. There are definitely differences in that regard, it's not what makes the difference between these two phones. Nope, it's something else entirely, which if you've seen my review with the S24 Ultra or my comparison with the Pixel 8 Pro, you'll know that already is the anti-reflective surface on the Samsung. It's something you can tell clearly even when the screen's off and in standby mode. Point it at a ceiling or a bright light source, the light just doesn't reflect anywhere near as much on the Samsung as it does on the iPhone. With the screens on, it means you get that little bit more visibility from Samsung's display, and that's true when you're indoors with quite timid indoor lighting, but even more true when you're outdoors in bright daylight. It did make a bit of difference when out shooting with the camera, and also means I can have the screen brightness set quite low, without needing to boost it to counteract reflections as much. iPhone is still strong outdoors in bright daylight despite the lack of anti-reflective coating, but Samsung does edge it here. As for actual brightness, both are very bright panels, as smartphones go. iPhone goes up to 2000 nits, Samsung 2600. Both can reach up to 120Hz refresh rates too, and can adapt to lower rates when the content requires it, like when you're reading articles or ebooks. Samsung's is a bigger display at 6.8 inches versus Apple's 6.7. As for colours, well, there's surprisingly not a massive amount in this. They look quite similar when you're watching them side by side. Now, just like you'll find in the camera section later, Samsung's display is tuned to boost sharpness a little, and iPhone's screen keeps a more natural looking texture and has slightly more golden or warm tones to it. Now, in truth, neither will really disappoint you once you're immersed in your favourite content. Now, it is worth talking about some software features, and no, I'm not going to go into great lengths talking Android versus iPhone, but I do want to point to a couple of areas that the iPhone is lacking. Now, Android has gone all in on AI recently, and that includes Samsung, offering some really handy abilities when it comes to generative edits in the Gallery and Photos app. But the star of the show, for me at least in terms of usability, is Circle to Search. It's just so useful being able to circle something and have Google find it with a really high degree of accuracy. I could circle a photo of a local church in my small village and it doesn't just return generic church results, but articles and photos related to that exact one. It does similar with sneakers, plants and all manner of other stuff. And you don't have to take a photo of it first like you might with Apple's Photos app and the visual lookup feature. And then there's the S Pen, which any old school Galaxy Note lover will tell you can make a difference. Now, I can't say I use it all the time, but if nothing else, it's useful for giving my hand a break when I need it. Now, comparing performance is difficult when you're looking at iPhone versus Samsung, only because Android and iOS are very different operating systems. iOS is so efficient that it generally means battery capacities are considerably lower than their Android counterparts. Not that Apple ever publishes those. The thing worth noting here, however, to save me from splitting hairs, is that both phones are fast, powerful, and are capable of loading graphically intense, demanding games. There is a sense that the A17 Pro chipset in the iPhone is really powerful, and just about beats the Snapdragon 8 Gen 3 in terms of raw capability, especially when it comes to processing large video files when you're recording those. If you use both of the phones though, what you'll experience is a fast, powerful device regardless of whether you go Samsung or Apple. As for battery life, despite the smaller size, I got further from the full iPhone battery than I did from Samsung, but there wasn't really much in this. It was roughly the difference between having a really comfortable 2-day battery on the iPhone and needing to be topped up before the end of the evening on the Samsung. I mean, the second evening. This was with about 3 hours of use in my typical day, usually split between YouTube, social media, and casual gaming. Both charge relatively quickly and use wireless charging too. So okay, let's go to the all-important cameras, because as far as actual basic capabilities go, the two are pretty evenly matched, if only because they have strong main ultra-wide and periscope zoom cameras. They differ in sensor makeup and processing, which is where you'll notice that they show quite different approaches. But the long and short of it is that you can get strong, sharp, vibrant images from both regardless of which lens you use. Samsung, as I've noted several times, tends to crank up the saturation and contrast so that in a lot of scenes, natural elements like skies and grass in landscapes start to take on a hyper-real artificial look. Samsung's automatic white balancing is a little different to Apple's too, often cleaning it out and sometimes giving it a bit of a green tint. It also seems to overexpose, so highlights in images tend to blow out and lose detail and color a little, and they have that over-sharpened look to them. Now typically the iPhone processing tends to be a bit warmer, so any scenes with reds, oranges or yellows look a bit more red. Textures do tend to look a little more natural and highlights are better controlled on the iPhone though, most of the time at least. Other times, particularly when zooming in on that zoom camera, the images can start to get a little dark and grainy. Contrast is also often high, particularly sometimes when it comes to the shadows and the dark parts of the images, where the iPhone seems to crush those and kill a little bit of the detail. So despite feeling that the Samsung zoom camera is better, I did find, particularly in low light, that it would sometimes fail to counteract the motion blur produced by not having completely steady hands. But it was better at giving consistent results across the multiple lenses. Now at nighttime they both are great at shooting night mode shots, but as you'd suspect, the primary cameras are the strongest here, but they can both use all three lenses to relatively good effect. But Samsung's does seem stronger. It seems to draw in the most light in these nighttime shots and does a better job with the ultra-wide and zoom cameras in this low light. iPhone's ultra-wide seems to really struggle in low light, producing images with rough contrast and details, which end up looking quite rough compared to the Samsung, and the zoom camera, as I mentioned on iPhone, is quite grainy when the light levels drop. Now where iPhone really excels though is in video. Apple's created this tool that lets you get great looking video content that's sharp, smooth and color rich. Samsung's again often takes on a weird artificial colouring, which is a little overexposed and lacking in detail, even when shooting in the higher resolutions. iPhone stabilization seems a bit more effective too, giving a slightly smoother finish to video when I'm moving. I also found that Samsung struggled with rolling shutter effect when I was panning left and right. And while niche, the iPhone video capabilities extend to being able to record ProRes RAW and in log, which when you're using your iPhone as an additional camera in a professional rig is just aces. Let's face it, when you're spending more than £1,000 or $1,000 on a phone, you want to get an impeccable device. Neither of these is that, but they are truly fantastic phones in their own right, and picking one over the other is a challenge. I really like the S24 Ultra, and if it wasn't for some of the imperfections in the camera photo processing and the video especially, it would be the winner, no question. iPhone is surprisingly a tiny bit cheaper, it has a better video camera and impeccably smooth performance and great battery life, plus access to lots of great creative apps and services. I think it's a really tough call, but for the price I think it's a more sensible purchase for a lot of people, particularly if you like filming video. But for media consumption, that anti-reflective display on the Samsung makes a massive difference, so I'm a little torn. But if I had to pick one for myself, I'd pick the Samsung. What do you think? Let me know in the comments, or you can get me on Threads. I'm at Cam Bunton. If you did like this video, please do leave a thumbs up, subscribe and tap that notification bell, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.